It is now day 3 of the land and cultural war being conducted in Israel and now Gaza as Israel retaliates. There are also now market fears of potentially stagflation risks and negative supply shocks. We still have rockets coming from Gaza into Israel. State Department's reporting that 9 Americans are dead in the fighting, likely dual citizens. Most flights have been canceled for most of the international airlines from Germany or from London or from America into Israel, Tel Aviv. Israel is planning on calling 300,000 reservist soldiers. It's a pretty large number, especially given Israel's population. JP Morgan calling all of their workers to work from home. Citibank reporting that this will likely create a negative supply shock. This is really a way of saying that we can reduce global economic growth and spending since the velocity of money can freeze during times of war, but also unfortunately leads oil prices to rise, which are what we are seeing in pre-market now. As of right now, which is early morning on the 9th in California and Eastern time in New York, we're looking at oil up about 3.8% on the Western blend and 3.5% on the U.S. blend, with natural gas up about 2 basis points. Stock futures down following this. Not a surprise, given that we're expecting the combined death toll from this conflict to be a lot larger than what it's currently being reported as. Right now, still only being reported at 1,100, which of course is already devastating, but this is the same number that's been reported for the last 24 hours, so it's likely substantially low, especially given the multitude of airstrikes that have been conducted on the Gaza Strip, specifically Gaza City, with now expectations that over 100,000 individuals have been displaced from the Gaza City. Unfortunately, with 100,000 displaced from Gaza City, it's highly likely that many are or have not survived the air incursion in Gaza City. We expect, unfortunately, now more lives to add to the death toll, both on the Israeli side and the Palestinian side. Note, at the moment, Israel has stated that their goal is to destroy Hamas. In writing, their argument is their goal is to destroy Hamas's military infrastructure. However, in speaking, it is clear that it is the belief of the Israeli government that Hamas is deeply intertwined in the societal fabric of the Palestinian population. This creates substantial problems, given that in order to root out a military or political faction within Gaza, where in most of the population may be sympathetic to or part of Hamas, becomes very difficult to destroy that political faction without also the loss of many, many civilian lives. It's very much one of the reasons why the United States had such challenges in a country like Afghanistan, where even though you might be able to fight the public facing Taliban, it is very difficult to eliminate the Taliban sympathies of the individual populace that live in the area. Israel is now reporting that a number of northern infiltrators have also been killed, potentially from Hezbollah. Fighting in the north and south continuing. Israel arguing that in southern towns, major battles have ended. However, terrorists are still flowing over, in the words of Israel, flowing over from the Palestinian border and via quadcopters, which are still coming over into the Israeli side, with the largest attack taking Israelis by surprise at a music festival where over the weekend over 260 are believed to have died in just the music festival. We have a promise by Israel to block all access for deliveries, food, water, and energy. Basically, a promise to substantially increase the human suffering in the Gaza Strip. West Bank so far not as clearly a focus for Israel. Right now, if we look at 10-year treasuries, just to see how the treasury market is moving, The 10-year Treasury in pre-market here is moving up about 8 basis points, setting at about nearly 4.8, with the 2-year Treasury sitting up about a 5.6 basis points. That spread with the 10-year moving higher than the 2-year, once again steepening that yield curve. So unfortunately, this is something that comes at a time where we also have a disaster with Ukraine and Russia. We also have an inflationary disaster in the United States and in many parts of the world. And while that inflation is expected to slowly fade away, the uncertainty that this new conflict creates is leading markets to rotate down, at least as the pre-market here begins. NASDAQ down about 60 basis points, Tesla down 1.7, Enphase down 1.2, Palantir down 1.4. Let's take a look at some of those larger megas. Go drop into Apple here, about 35 basis points to the downside. Microsoft down about a 46. Let's take a brief listen here to see what the MSM is telling us.
Legitimate professors, students who came to believe the poison of the Third Reich, who came to think that in the wake of World War I, the Jews had literally abandoned Germany. And remember what Hitler said, it's the Jews who caused their own misfortune. Now we have Palestinian Hamas apologists and their acolytes here in the West, their accomplices. Jonathan saying, Israel brought this on, blaming the victim while we're still collecting the bodies is as disgraceful and as dishonorable.
So you've got shock commentary here, but let's be clear, one of the things that we spoke a lot about yesterday when we were covering the origins of the conflict. It's always important to remember some of the history here. And I think it's easiest to look at the two different versions of maps that are regularly circulated. One is the more pro-Israel map, and one is the more pro-Palestine map. So up here, up top, you have this more pro-Palestine map, which suggests this expansion of Israeli land, the white from the green over time, and really the compression of Palestinian territory, specifically in regards to the West Bank here, with the divided city Jerusalem essentially becoming just the territory of Israel, and the U.S. Embassy moving from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem under the Trump administration. And this settling of Palestinian territory, whereas, of course, the Israeli response is, whoa, 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 this has been part of the ancient Jewish kingdom for thousands of years, and we actually have much less land now than we used to. Israel's population, by the way, 9.36 million. This compares to about 2 million who live in the Gaza Strip, Palestinians, and then about 1.5 that live in the West Bank. Altogether, you've got about 4.9 million Palestinians. Let's switch here to see if we can get a little bit of a different perspective as well. And we'll take a listen in to some of the MSM.
At the top of the show, we were talking to Edward Lawrence. He was reporting from the White House. And it is a federal holiday. But President Biden, and he has nothing on his schedule to come out. We do know that John Kirby, the national security spokesperson, will be on Martha's show at 3 p.m. But is it untenable to think that Biden could be silent again today?
It is untenable, especially as we're learning American hostages, likely in the scenario, 9 Americans killed. We need to hear from the president. We didn't hear from him until late afternoon. The attack happened at 6:30 a.m. But when Americans are involved, when Americans have been killed, to hear from...
Keep in mind, the bond market is closed because it's Columbus Day, so you've got the latest update as bond market futures, which traded, but bond market is closed today. Again, Columbus Day, banking holiday, many people are off. However, it is the stock market is open today.
The Special Forces hostage team over to the region. We don't know the answer to that question.
I would imagine, at the very least, I imagine that you'll see a photo release today of the president in the Situation Room or on the phone with somebody doing something like that. So I just want to show this call for number one. What Peter Doocy was describing are these crises around the world, and every president has them. This is not new, but this is like an urgent crisis. But he's got a lot of things going on. Afghanistan, of course, Iran, China, there's problems in Ethiopia and other places in Africa, Ukraine, and now Israel. So that's a lot on his plate. And this from a Fox News poll saying that 58% of those polled disapprove of the president on foreign policy. Now, a lot of elections are never necessarily hinge on foreign policy, but how do you think that this plays into the overall question about Republicans and Democrats going into 2024?
Well, if there are American hostages at play, this could be another Afghanistan moment. And you're exactly right. Typically, the economy frames approval ratings. But as Axios has said, it is impossible to deny the blunder of Afghanistan, the fall of Afghanistan, and how it affected polling. He was at 49% in August of 2021. 1 month later, he was at 43%. Now he's in the 30s. People saw chaos, and this adds to the general feeling of chaos. You see chaos on the southern border. People aren't liking how they're feeling economically. And then you look overseas and you see Ukraine, you see China playing these war games essentially in the South China Sea. And China's watching this, you know. Taiwan is probably looking more tempting today than it did.
All right, let's touch on oil here quickly. It's interesting that right now it does look like oil is fading some of its gains. It's just a fancy way of saying that oil rose about 4%. Now it's only sitting up actually rose initially as much as 5% briefly. Pulled back to about 4%, now pulling back to about 3.5%. You do have various different perspectives of what could happen here. You've got Goldman Sachs, for example. I've got a piece here from Goldman. They're suggesting that you're going to actually potentially see Brent stabilize around $85 this week and still run to about $100 by the summer of next year. However, they do soften that blow by suggesting that this $100 call may miss, given that you might see Saudi Arabia actually start increasing production again of oil. Something that normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia could actually lead to more production. However, there is a downside risk to Iranian oil production that potentially, as they come under international sanction or pressure, there may be some downside risk to production. Keep in mind, Iran still publicly arguing that they're not supporting Hamas. You still have the United States taking the official position that, yes, while Iran has supported Hamas in the past, there's no indication that they absolutely are right now. This comes at the same time as the Wall Street Journal is suggesting, no, it's obvious Hamas is being supported by Israel. I think the problem for the Biden administration is it doesn't look good that they just negotiated a $6 billion prisoner swap, releasing sanctioned funds, restricted funds that were in South Korea, which Iran owned. It's Iranian money. And releasing that to their coffers essentially through Qatar, as long as the funds are used for humanitarian purposes, which, you know, can be defined in any which way, quite frankly, and through clever accounting, basically gives Iran access to this capital, which is expected to be flowing through to support Hamas through this incursion, creating substantial instability. Of course, there are plenty of individuals throughout the Arab or Muslim communities that are saying stand with Palestine, stand for freeing Palestine from the land and evictions and land expansion of Israel. And of course, Israel arguing, quite the opposite. Of course, the argument, I think, from a humanitarian point of view is anytime we see the lives of individual citizens perish, our hearts go out and we feel like there must be better ways than just war and incursions. Anyway, let's get to the opening bell here. Should be starting here soon. What would they? CNBC is on commercial. I find that quite odd. Okay, the bell should be happening right now. I'm pretty sure I'm on the right page. Are they just, what the heck? Oh, they changed all the channels. Or did I just go to the wrong one? Sorry, I guess I missed it. I think I just went to the wrong one. Oh yeah, I did. My bad. Oh.
Ford's company expected to begin trading
There's the end of it.
The first.
I can't believe I went to 75 instead of 85. I've never done that. Anyway, here, ding, ding, ding. Here was the opening bell. Stock market now open, and we'll see how markets react. So far, it looks like the reaction is slightly to the downside. We'll keep an eye on how this evaluates. and expands throughout the day. Microsoft down now 80 basis points. You've got Apple down 41, Tesla down 178, and we'll also keep an eye on oil. Keep an eye on data coming out this week as well. So economic data this week, we have PPI coming out in 2 days. That's Wednesday. PPI comes out. That's producer price inflation. We're expecting to see PPI at 0.3% versus the 0.7 of prior, and core PPI to come in at 0.2, down from 0.3 prior. Inflation expectations, CPI, which will come out on Thursday. We're looking at month-over-month CPI, 0.3%, down from 0.6 prior. Core year-over-year, 4.1 versus 4.3 prior, and core month-over-month, 0.3 versus 0.3. University of Michigan sentiment coming out on Friday. On Friday as well, we will have a price increase for the Noob vs. Pro courses on building your wealth and productivity. There are going to be some really incredible parts. I've already got the content getting framed out for not only how to get paid more at your job, negotiate any deal and win, speak and present with confidence. It's all brand new content. How to buy your first house, build your personal brand, boost your productivity, profitable side hustles, analyze stocks, sell anything to anyone, retire early, you name it. Remember, when you check multiple of these boxes, you stack the discount. But do check these out. We will be increasing the pre-sale price of these on Friday. The courses will be coming out over the next couple of months, but they are on pre-sale right now. So do check those out. Let's listen in over here to see what commentary we're getting.
Because, of course, oil is up, as we've been discussing this morning. They were down on Friday. There is an expectation in the marketplace that if a deal is to be reached, it would be a lot of Exxon stock. As I pointed out on Friday, Darren Woods, the company's CEO, has been quite price disciplined, at least in the small snapshot of M&A that we've had an opportunity to watch, namely Denbury, a deal that was...
I'm going to continue on this idea of oil quickly. Let's see here. Comparing to prior conflicts like 2008, it's worth looking that crude oil was on such a hair trigger back then during the recession that reports of conflict in Israel temporarily led oil to run up to $150 a barrel. However, now hedge fund managers believe that there will be limited damage due to oil price spikes and threats to supply, mostly because oil traders have become used to Middle East instability and oil instability, really frequently leaving oil supply unscathed, that despite all of the disasters that occur in the Middle East, oil just seems to continue flowing. As a result of this, traders are pricing less of the potential pain going forward of oil moving. And right now, oil on the international blend still sitting at 3.5%, 3.78 on the Western blend. I always think it's weird that we have two different blends, but we do. So let's take a look and see what other commentary we've got. We'll also pull some of the live blogs here in just a moment, but let's get some commentary here.
9/11. Israeli airstrikes now hammering the Gaza Strip after the ruling Hamas militant group in Gaza attacked Israel on multiple fronts Saturday morning, raining rockets into Israel, while Hamas fighters infiltrated, in some cases by paraglider, as this video shows. A music festival in the Israeli desert, one of their first targets. 260 people were killed here, many more taken hostage.
Worth noting that now Zelensky is comparing this invasion to the invasion of Russia into Ukraine. And this now a little bit of a recap of some of what we've seen this weekend as I grab some more updates.
The Defense Department announcing the U.S. is sending military assets closer to Israel to deter any further attacks, while U.S. officials are not ruling out using the assets to help one of America's closest allies in its fight.
Growing questions about Iran's potential role in this attack. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that he has not yet seen evidence that Iran actually directed the violence, but that Hamas and Iran do have a long relationship. And again, we're hearing now from the State Department that the number has grown to 9 Americans confirmed killed. They're saying also that there are a number of other Americans still unaccounted for. Adrian and Lynette.
All right, Alice, with this developing story. Alice, thank you. The FAA is urging all U.S. airlines to use caution when flying in Israeli airspace. Some airlines have canceled their flights altogether, and we were there as one of the first flights from Tel Aviv arrived into LAX carrying passengers who escaped the chaos. Emotions still very raw and powerful, as many of the people we talked with had to leave loved ones behind.
It's our family. It's hard. We had to go. Because of our kids. But like, my heart is there.
Our family, friends, and relatives still there, trying to survive at this moment. That's the only thing we can do. They can do, just try to survive.
You know, I'm going to pull off this mention that Russia is actually interesting. The Kremlin's taking a neutral stance on this, which is, initially there was commentary out of Russia that was very supportive of the Hamas attack. However, which was expected given the pain between Moscow and Israel, especially since Russia seeks to destabilize the United States, which, Israel's a staunch ally of. However, now the Kremlin is suggesting that they are extremely concerned and call for an immediate halt to fighting. How ironic. In Israel, the continuation of this round of violence, of course, is fraught with further escalation and expansion of the conflict. They did not condemn the attack by Hamas or offer condolences to the victims. However, they did call for an immediate end to the fighting. That is the Russian response. We also have Israel airstrikes hitting mosques this morning in Gaza, and multiple religious camps within refugee camps. So, in other words, refugee camps and mosques within them being struck by airstrikes. This is some of the most populated areas of Gaza. Israel is also hitting marketplaces in Gaza, as well as other refugee camps, not just those with religious installations inside of them. This is going to be a massive humanitarian crisis for really everywhere, but quite frankly, everywhere in terms of Israel and Gaza. But frankly, I think that what's likely to happen here is a substantial ground assault into Gaza following repeated bombardment by aircraft, and there will be a long battle, much like a Russia-Ukraine, into trying to root Gaza and the Gaza Strip of Hamas. All right, let's keep going here. Let's see what we got. All right, remember the prices for those Nuverse Pro courses will be going up this Friday. Check them out at meetkevin.com.
For humanitarian purposes, they don't invest in schools or hospitals. They use it for digging tunnels, training their barbaric militants. And we saw what they were doing, massacring innocent families, kidnapping them into Gaza. It's exactly like ISIS. We are fighting evil.
Right. And I know that right now is about defending Israel and making sure that the citizens are protected, and then you will be conducting oversight in the coming days. But what about the recent judicial protest? There's been some talk that perhaps Israel was caught off guard because that might have created this opportunity for Hamas.
Well, I don't accept it. You shouldn't look for reasoning or logic when you deal with terrorists. The same idea like 9/11. You cannot explain why they did it, why ISIS butchered so many innocent people. Those are evil people. They don't care about their own people. The Palestinian people suffer from the regime of Hamas. So I don't think we should look at what we did wrong. Those people will always be against us. That is why I think now when we start to plan the operation against Hamas, we should be very strong, very determined. And I would propose to the government not to hold our force, to go all the way to eradicate Hamas once and for all. It will be better for Israel and for the Palestinian people in Gaza.
Ambassador, I know the priority number one right now is to get your people back, as it is for the U.S. We know that 9 Americans are dead, and we have no idea actually right now how many are being held hostage. Trey Yingst on the ground.
That's actually a strategy by Gaza is you purposely take Israeli hostages, so that way it's much more challenging to attack in the Gaza Strip. I don't think that's holding Israel back at all, but it's certainly going to complicate some of the ground battles. A lot of talk about what the Federal Reserve might say. No, we won't really hear about the Fed or from the Fed until November 1st. November 1st is the deadline for investing in HouseHack. If you're looking to investing in HouseHack, which is now available at a $5,000 limit at Meet Kevin, or $5,000 minimum, not limit. Go check that out. And that fundraise will be ending on November 1st, which is Fed Day. But Fed Day is expecting now, well, we probably won't get much of an update. I'm not sure that futures are going to move the rate monitor, but at least the latest look we had at getting another rate increase. Oh, yeah. Getting another rate increase is expected to be just 20% for November 1st. And we're sitting at a combined approximately 29% for a rate increase December 13th. Looks like the peak of Fed rates may be in. If I search the Fed terminal rate, again, these may just be slightly updated from futures, but not from the actual bond market trading, given that it is a banking holiday today, Columbus Day. I'll still wonder why that is a banking holiday, but okay. Fed term rate actually all the way down at 5.41 right now. Anything above 5.375 implies one more rate hike, but those numbers turning down as the yield curve is steepening.
Sit down with MBS in Saudi Arabia and then Netanyahu right after, and they spoke, both of them, positively about a possible peace deal eventually. How much of this, Ambassador, do you think was a push to push Israel away from any sort of a
You can see stocks here starting to rise slightly.
Off the table in this moment?
No, I would not be surprised. You know, the Iranians are very involved. They sponsored Hamas for many years. They guide them. We know about Hamas experts that flew to Tehran to get guidance about explosives and military operatives. So I would not be surprised at all. Iran was not happy to see the Saudis coming closer to Israel and that the U.S. is being back involved in the region. And I would not be surprised that Iran was actually planning it in order to put a hold for the negotiations. But we will continue to seek peace with the moderate Muslim world.
Here's the S&P 500. You can see S&P 500 trying to recover here. And as far as how many have invested so far, see some of the comments here. Yeah, about 1,000 people already, which is about twice the number of individuals from our Reg D round. Reg A, of course, having lower accreditation standards, which you can learn about by going to househack.com. So, and I'm still seeing that pain coming for real estate this winter. So we're being very cautious and cognizant as we're moving into this winter market here. Patience will be key. Okay, looking for more on the update front. We are standing by for, let's see what we have here. Zelensky was the latest we had here. I'm looking at the Markets Live blog as well, just to understand how the suits are replying to this. The biggest thing here is this belief that we don't actually believe this oil spike will be lasting. It's worth noting that oil did have quite a spike in the 6 weeks following about June 19th. However, oil has really taken the elevator down with the exception of today. You could see that if we just go to the 6-month chart here, look on screen now. You can see about that July 19th-ish, beginning of July, rise in oil prices all the way to about $96 a barrel on Brent. That is your international blend. Straight down to about 84 now, only as a result of the Israeli and Palestinian disaster are we seeing oil prices up about 3.5%, but a far cry from where we have been, and certainly a lot weaker of a reaction, more muted than you would have expected. I think that's what's leading likely the S&P 500 to rotate up, given that the reaction is not as severe as expected. Let's take a check here on CNBC.
Drugs, again, then we're talking now about what Bristol Myers is potentially getting with Mirati. Use these drugs with Keytruda or Opdivo as sort of the first line. I hope eventually as some of these drugs become first line as well. But that's where Bristol, I guess, is focused and needs to go, particularly, again, given the patent expiration
right.
that they're facing.
These stories that they're running about how there might be another bidder.
Doesn't sound right to me, but I wouldn't, based on what I've heard.
Here's an interesting story. So this one talks about the end game in Gaza. This is actually very fascinating. Let's take a look at this. Let's see. Well, in the meantime, maybe we have, we'll keep an eye over here or over here. So this is interesting. Gaza won't hamper markets unless Israel hits Iran. Now that I find very interesting. So if Israel hits Iran, that's how you start potentially expanding into like the more World War III direction, because that's probably where you get a little bit more of U.S. involvement. I think that's probably why the United States is towing this line of no, Iran isn't involved. Everything's okay. Iran's not involved. And everybody's like, come on, obviously Iran is involved here. But worth noting, by the way, that some of the mortars that are being shot from Palestine into Israel cost as low as $1,000. However, the missile defenses that Israel shoots via the Iron Dome, first of all, the defense system runs an algorithm to calculate if it's even worth shooting down the mortar, depending on where it's going to land. And if it is, then the Iron Dome will fire a $40,000 to $50,000 missile in defense. Yikes. So this piece here in Bloomberg, an elusive endgame in Gaza, given Gaza's geographical position surrounded by an Israel that has vastly superior weaponry, it would seem to be bordering on the irrational, basically, for Gaza to attack Israel. They have brought themselves the wrath of the Israeli Defense Forces. I mean, that is true. This is why some people are suggesting that like a false flag began this incursion into Israel so that Israel has the opportunity to just turn around and just absolutely obliterate Hamas throughout Palestine. And so the question is, what could possibly motivate Hamas to do this? And the idea that this is potentially or unmistakably a move designed to provoke a response, potentially an overreaction. The two best comparisons that this writer could think of would be 1991, when Saddam Hussein, Iraq, fired missiles into Israel after U.S.-led forces began bombing Iraq. His aim was to provoke Israel into joining the conflict, thereby bringing other Arab nations into the war on Iraq's side. And the second came a decade later with 9/11, an assault on the U.S. so horrible that a response was almost certain. Saddam's gambit didn't work. Israel refrained from getting involved, showing impressive restraint. Al-Qaeda's strategy in 2001 was all too successful, eventually prompting the U.S. into the invasion in Iraq. So really interesting, this idea of how history could potentially mirror what's being done here, but also really why? Why would Hamas desire to provoke this reaction from Israel? At this point, an Israeli response involving Gaza is inevitable. Well, yeah, and there's the potential of a likely conflict between Israel and Hezbollah to the north against Lebanon as well, which would not be ideal at all. Hold on a sec. What is this? Okay, I thought for a moment maybe that was a Tesla ad. It's a Toyota ad. We should expect now that oil prices rise somewhat, though the interruption of caused by war to be likely lower than usual. Another day, another shock. Some are calling this just another way to create more uncertainties for the stock market, for the bond market, and potential inflationary fears yet again to rise. Let's jump in over here and listen in to more commentary.
And while authorities say there are no credible threats, they are also not taking any chances. And Eric Shawn is live outside a synagogue in New York City with this part of the story this morning. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Dana. As you said, Israel not far away, not a word away at all from New York City. Both Israel and this city, victims of terrorism in the past, and police here and elsewhere across the country beefing up security at houses of worship like this synagogue here on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. The NYPD has established roving patrols at both synagogues, churches, and mosques to try and prevent any type of terrorist attack. They've deployed the Critical Response Command and anti-terrorism units. You know, that standard procedure after world-shaking events like Hamas's savage attack against the Jewish state. New York State comprises the largest Jewish community outside of Israel. About 1.7 million Jewish residents live here.
Some comment here from Jennifer about the U.S. will now fund this from Ukraine to Israel. It is worth noting that the United States does provide substantial weapons and ammunition support. Those $40,000 to $50,000 rockets for the Iron Dome are probably American rockets.
Want to be observed.
And it's not just here at the Big Apple. In Houston, Chicago, Miami, Washington, D.C., and elsewhere, security is enhanced at houses of worship. Los Angeles also adding extra eyes on both synagogues and mosques. The chief of police, Michael Moore, posted this.
JP here suggests 900 Jewish rabbis with IDF escorts were allowed to flood the Dome of the Rock, which caused this reaction. It's worth noting that you did walk into a Jewish holiday here, so it's probably going to happen either way, right?
Credible threats, but you know, Dana, this morning,
to be clear, like rabbis walking around holy sites was going to happen either way.
All of these police departments all across the country need to figure out a way to recruit more people so that they can cover all of these things that we need. Eric Shawn, thank you.
All right, let's bring in now General Jack Keane, Fox News senior strategic analyst. And we bring you in, General, because the Pentagon is now moving some of its...
Yeah, Miguel, the United States Department is taking the stance that there's no evidence Iran is involved, but I actually agree with the Wall Street Journal here. It's very difficult for the United States to actually admit that Iran is involved because of their $6 billion negotiation with hostages, releasing basically seized funds, seized Iranian funds back to Iran. But they're almost certainly involved.
Is this sending a message to Iran, perhaps, to deter Hezbollah?
Yeah, well, frankly, certainly we're demonstrating our unequivocal support to Israel. The president made that in a public announcement, and here's a physical expression of that by repositioning our aircraft carrier that is normally in this area, but getting that, as you indicated, closer to Israel. We're sending that message to anybody that is thinking about expanding this war. And we all obviously know Hamas conducted a surprise attack against Israel.
It's worth noting that right now, Lockheed Martin is up 8%, obviously heavily involved in the supplying of weaponry in not only the Ukrainian conflict, but now the Israeli conflict. Raytheon, if I could get the right ticker here, another defense contractor. Oh, boy. Let me get the right ticker here. Stand by.
That's really what has taken place.
Well, General, let me ask you this. Are we involved now? We've got Americans that are dead, 9 at least. We have an unknown number of American hostages that we need to get out.
4% on Raytheon. So it's really Lockheed Martin that's jumping about 8%.
Special operations.
Well, here's what we are doing. Number one, they receive $3 billion in military and foreign aid assistance every year. We've got pre-positioned ammunition and stock there as well.
American Airlines, United Airlines falling about 4% given the canceled flights.
Missiles, bombs, and also some offensive missiles for their fighters. We will likely give them that and more. Whatever they need, we're going to give them. During the 73 war, we gave them 22 tons of equipment, fighter jets, tanks, ammunition. We're also helping them with intelligence. Obviously, we always had a close relationship.
A lot of good that did. Oh, I don't know what happened there. I don't know how honestly, like, I feel less safe at night now that Israel was so surprised. Like, the CIA should have known about this one. Maybe they did.
With a military operation, certainly we would assist in the planning, coordination, and actually in the participation of it. We've got Americans on the ground. We have a right to go get them any place in the world as far as we're concerned. And that's always been our mantra. But I think it's too early to make those decisions. That's all being done and highly classified. I think if they could get them out of there and do it safely, they would want to do that. I think the reason why Hamas took the hostages is to use them as leverage in negotiations.
Yes.
And there is some talk that some negotiations may indeed have already started. Don't know. That would likely involve a third party, somebody like Egypt. In reference to getting back to the military equipment that's in the area, since Israel became a state in 1948, they have never asked us to use our troops or our airplanes or our aircraft, our Navy ships, submarines. No military capability have they asked us to use ourselves to assist them. They take great pride in doing that themselves. However, here's a possibility. If they get overwhelmed, they have 3 air defense systems, Arrow, David Sling, and the one we talk about all the time, Iron Dome. If it gets overloaded and swarmed and they can't stop the casualties to Israeli citizens because of Hezbollah's involvement, they have 130,000 plus rockets and missiles. And the Israelis asked the United States to assist them in taking out some of those batteries. I don't see how we could say no to that request, even though it would be the first one ever made since 1948.
Yeah. And that was going to be my follow-up was, what is the scenario in which the U.S. enters the war directly? I just spoke with Ambassador Danan, who said they're not expecting U.S. troops at this point, but you just laid out where that scenario could play out. I want to ask you about...
Yeah, it's an interesting comment here. The U.S. wouldn't release $6 billion in frozen assets to Russia. Why would they do it for Iran? The argument is that it was part of a prisoner swap deal. There's this hope that an Iranian nuclear deal could be reached between the United States and Iran, that relations could be normalized. It's all part of a diplomatic goal. I'm not sure if you can be diplomatic, though, with Iran.
Adversaries know full well if they make any attempt at those forces, we're going to respond very strongly in kind. And by the way, in addition to repositioning the aircraft carrier and the destroyer and the cruisers, we have brought in some additional fighter squadrons into the area in the last 48, 72 hours. So,
and
yes,
I know you mentioned
our adversaries know we're there, and we will respond forcefully.
And General, I know you mentioned the $3 billion that the president can draw down at any moment to send more weapons into Israel. And that is important. And I wonder how long this goes on and if they need more aid, because at this point now we're sending aid and weapons to Ukraine, to Taiwan, and possibly more weapons to Israel. And many Americans will begin to wonder, where does that leave us?
Well, I wonder if Americans really would question us providing assistance to the Israelis after what we've witnessed on the screen. Is that what you're suggesting? I find that really hard to believe, that it would come down to not being able to provide them money. They've never asked for our troops. The Ukrainians have not asked for our troops either, but yet they've destroyed half of the Russian military and they got back 83% of their territory with no American blood spent. I think we will give the Israelis whatever they need. And the president's made that statement. He was right in making it. The Israelis know it. We've done it in the past. President Nixon was the one who provided the huge amount of support in the '73 war. This is a close ally of ours, and we're going to give them what they need.
Well put, and I'm glad you laid it out for anyone that might be wondering that. Thank you, General. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, this is pretty wild so far. Let's jump on over for a moment, see what else we got here. Oh, alert. Okay, well, we might stay there. Hold on a sec. Let's just see what their alert here is.
Israel retaliating with new airstrikes on Gaza after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu formally declared war against Hamas. The terrorist group launched a surprise multi-front assault on southern Israel over the weekend. More than 800 are reported dead, thousands others wounded, and about 100 men, women, and children, including the elderly, all taken hostage. And now we're learning at least 9 Americans are amongst those killed. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Dana Perino. Bill Hemmer is off today. Good morning, Aisha.
Good morning to you, Dana. I'm Aisha Hasni. That fierce battle with Hamas terrorists now in its 3rd day. We have seen the pictures throughout the morning. Israeli Defense Forces, they are bombarding terrorist targets inside the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, the U.S. is moving the USS Gerald Ford carrier strike group to the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. Close.
All right, so far it looks like we're getting a sort of a recap of very similar information that we've been covering already. I think we've covered almost everything, market reaction and otherwise. I'm going to jump now to the course member live stream. If you're not a course member yet, I'm a financial advisor. We talk finances all the time. Go check it out at meetkevin.com. We've got non-personalized financial advice. We've got personalized financial advice at stackhack.com. But go to meetkevin.com. You see all the links to everything. You can see the startup that I'm fundraising with, the Nuverse Pro courses, the live stream, everything. So we're going to go do some analysis together. Thank you so much for being here. If you liked it, consider sharing the video, and we'll be back with more updates as there are more updates. Thanks again.